Today's episode is brought to you by Mazars. SoundCartel. With another generation nipping at our heels, who are Generation Alpha? And what impact are they set to have on business and the way we market to them? From SoundCartel, I'm Nicole Goodman, and this is Business Essentials Daily. We've had the Boomers, the Gen Xers, the Ys and the Zs. You'll be one of them for sure, but watch out because now a new generation is emerging, Generation Alpha, and it's time we started to take note. Social researcher Mark McCrindle gave them their name, and along with fellow researcher Ashley Fell at McCrindle Research, he's been delving into the minds of these youngsters, and also the minds of the parents, teachers and others closely connected with them. This group is certainly young. It covers kids born between 2010 and 2024, but they're the most globally connected generation of children ever. And now Mark and Ashley have written a book about them called Generation Alpha, Understanding Our Children and Helping Them Thrive. And Mark McCrindle tells Heather Dawson that while every generation experiences change, these switched-on 21st century kids will experience change at a whole new level.
Yeah, definitely. And we can see that already just in the early years of their lives. In fact, the year they began being born, 2010, was the year that Instagram was launched and the year that the iPad was released. And in fact, word of the year in 2010 was the word app. And that tells us a lot about how this generation has been shaped, this digital and device-driven era that they have had from literally their youngest years. And that's at a whole new level, of course, the digital and the global connectivity that they have and these devices that are in front of them from birth. And then you add to all of that in their early years, COVID, a global pandemic, and it just further accelerates the change. And people have often said that we resemble our times more than we resemble our parents. Well, how much more the case for this generation shaped in this very different era of fast pace of change with new technologies. They definitely are being shaped in an unprecedented time.
Now, you interviewed thousands of parents and teachers and other people directly connected to this alpha generation. What are the biggest concerns they have about understanding and nurturing this age group?
Well, they're aware of some of the benefits of the technology and that it does make them visual in terms of how they consume information, and productivity benefits come from that. The global connectivity, they appreciate the fact that they're more aware of what's happening right around the world and that they are social in terms of that connection and the influence that they have, mobile in terms of where they can work and study. It's amazing. But the biggest concern is also the digital world that they are exposed to. That the parents and the educators that we interviewed said, amazing technology they have in their hands and they see the benefits of it. But also it can create addiction. It can mean that they are just spending so long on it that they're not developing broader skills. That it can create a nature deficit disorder where they just don't get outdoors or develop broader life skills or feel competent playing broader sports or indeed have shorter attention spans because of the hyperstimulation of the device, let alone some of the downsides of the privacy issues or what they're posting or what they're having access to or some of the cyberbullying they might get exposed to. So that was the biggest concern and the biggest benefit of this generation. Growing up digital with these devices, incredible opportunities, but great uncertainty, definitely in the minds of their parents at least.
Mm-hmm. And of course, you're talking to business people at the moment, Mark. So is there a particular message for business groups about Generation Alpha?
Yes, well, it's the largest generation that the world has ever seen, and there are 2.7 million Generation Alphas being born globally every single week, by the way. We think that birth rates are slowing, and indeed, globally they are, but we've got the biggest population in the world ever, and that means that births are larger than they've ever been. And when they're fully or with us, Generation Alpha in 2024, at the end of that year, there'll be more than 2 billion of them. And they are not only the largest generation ever, but they're the largest emerging consumers ever, the largest middle class in our world ever before. The number one place for Generation Alphas, the country with the most of them, is India and then China. And then you've got Nigeria. Number three, such as the growth in births in Africa. All of this to say the largest generation ever, the largest generation of consumers ever, the most digitally supplied generation ever, the most materially endowed generation in history, and the most formally educated generation ever. And that means that if businesses need to prepare for the future, if they want to thrive in the years ahead, they need to understand this key and emerging generation. Within a decade, they'll be key employees as well, and they have influence and leverage and spend even beyond their own current earnings. They're the pop culture influencers. They're on social media more than any other generation, and so they do drive brand and reputation. So understanding the alphas is clearly key for our future.
And for Generation Alpha itself, what do they want?
Well, they're looking to make a difference with their life. They've said in the research that as they think about their future, they have concerns about whether they'll be able to afford a home and whether they'll be able to pay their way in times of increasing living costs. But the biggest concerns above that were things like not making a difference with their life, not reaching their full potential, being stuck in a job that they don't enjoy or find fulfillment in. In other words, this is a generation that don't just want secure employment, but they want to have impacts. They want to shape this world. They're very empowered from the youngest years. And I think that youthful idealism is fantastic. We see that in all generations of young people. But this generation are connected, are linked up, and are empowered with this technology. And I think they will be able to make some significant differences to key and emerging problems of their world.
Well, Mark, we've spoken to you often about the changing nature of work and the workplace. What do you think the future of work will look like for Generation Alpha?
Well, it'll be quite different to the one that we see today. The World Economic Forum says that almost 2/3 of primary school students will ultimately end up working in jobs that don't yet exist. And I think that we can see that to be the case because there are new jobs that we have now that we didn't have when today's school leavers began their education, working in blockchain and in AI and virtual reality and cybersecurity and app developers and social media marketers and the whole space of environmental concern and making sure that the world is well looked after in that way. So new jobs have emerged in the last decade. There'll be new jobs in the next decade that we don't yet have. And the way of work will also change, not just where we work. And obviously there's a lot of working from home now and mobile working, but the types of employment we have. We're seeing big shifts from full-time employment to more contractors and casual and part-time and gig economy work. And of course, how they work will be portfolio careers. They'll move across more roles and jobs than ever before. They'll be lifelong learners, upskilling and retraining more than ever. And our estimation is that they will have 6 separate careers in their lifetime, and they'll hold about 18 separate jobs or employers in that future. They'll work later in life than we've ever seen before, right through their 70s, such is the longevity boom. And the fact in a knowledge economy that we can work a lot later in life because it's using mental skills, not just physical strength. So we'll see this generation that'll live longer work later in life, and that'll transform the future of work from what we've seen in the past.
Well, final question, Mark. From COVID to climate change to extreme political polarisation in many parts of the world these days, it's easy for so many of us to be pessimistic about the way the world's heading. So what do you think lies ahead for Generation Alpha? Can we hope that there will be positivity in the way they look ahead?
Yeah, definitely. Having interviewed many Gen Alphas as part of this book, having interviewed and surveyed many of their parents and teachers as well, having put all this research together and being the father of 5 children myself, I can say I'm abundantly optimistic about the future for them. Now that's interesting because a lot of parents and educators and adults that we interviewed said, I'm glad I'm not young today. I'm glad I'm not being shaped in this world with all this uncertainty and with the great challenges that we see today. But, this is the only world they've ever known. And they're using that technology very adeptly. They're excited about their future. Yes, they see challenges and global uncertainties. They see climate change and instability. But, this is the only world they've ever known. And they're embracing the future with both hands and excitement to get on with it. They don't want to be of a prior era. They're excited being the age that they're at, in the time that they're at, and from an Australian perspective, in this amazing country that they're in, and are very optimistic about their future, notwithstanding some of the uncertainties that we as adults see. I think they'll tackle these problems with great skill, and the collegiality they bring, that collaborative nature, the technology in their hands and the global outlook and perspective they bring, I think will serve them well. I think they'll be amazing leaders in the future, and therefore that's why we're so optimistic and believe the future is in great hands as well, in the hands of Generation Alpha.
That was Mark McCrindle, Principal of McCrindle Research. He's co-author with Ashley Fell of the new book Generation Alpha. This episode of Business Essentials Daily is produced by the team at SoundCartel. Thanks for listening. I'm Nicole Goodman. We'll bring you more Be Daily tomorrow. Follow @BE Daily Podcast across social media and head to bedaily.com.au for more from the Business Essentials Daily podcast. SoundCartel. This episode was brought to you by Mazars. To find out more, visit mazars.com.au. That's mazars.com.au.